News with Bill, Episode 5. Bake like an Egyptian. Hi, and welcome back to News with Bill, where I tell you all about the weird, odd, and bizarre news stories that you won't believe are true. And in a lot of cases, you'll wish they weren't. So, with the pandemic starting to wind down a bit and the craziness at my day job calming down, I'm finally back. And quite frankly, it's been a hell of a ride since the last time I sent my dulcet tones out to the masses, but I'm sure that the same can be said by just about anyone living through what we are living through and have lived through in the past year. In any case, I hope that no random pieces of the Chinese rocket broke off and fell into your yard, and I hope that you spend any stimulus money that you may have received on cigars and beer. Now, on to the news. Car thief threatened to call cops on his victim. So an Oregon man who stole a car while the owner's child was actually still in the back seat is wanted by police after he returned to the scene to tell the woman to not leave her child unattended in her car. Apparently, the man had no idea that the kid was in the car when he took off with it, but when he realized what had happened, he went back and even went so far as to threaten to call the police on the child's mom, Crystal Leary. A Beaverton police spokesman reports he hopped in the car, drove it, realized there was a 4-year-old inside, and drove back and ordered her to take the child out of the car and then drove away again. We're thankful he had the decency to bring the little one back. The child, fortunately, was unharmed. The theft happened outside of a Beaverton meat market in Beaverton, Oregon. Apparently, Leary, in a stroke of genius, left her car running and the doors unlocked while she went inside to buy some food. In a televised news interview, Leary said, "As moms, we get really busy and we think we're just running in for a second, and this is just a perfect example of just letting our guards down and how terrible it could have ended. I am thankful that he is okay. It was so stupid and I'll never do that again. But it's that split-second decision that can change just everything." I mean, she can make all the excuses in the world, but they won't make her not stupid. Anyway, the car was recovered in Portland a few hours later, and the thief has not been caught as of this episode being recorded. This is, of course, yet another example of why there needs to be an aptitude test that must be passed by all prospective parents. Deadly things we used to think were safe. The old saying goes that life doesn't come with an instruction book. This is true, and it's really more of a learning process if you think about it. And part of that learning process often involves believing in and or doing some pretty dumb things along the way. And I am the perfect example of the whole doing some dumb things along the way thing. Ask anybody that knows me. Anyway, as luck would have it, we as a society, we've done a lot of shady things in the past that we thought were safe at the time. And so I thought it'd be fun to take a look at some of them. So it's going to kind of do it's a countdown. So we're going to start with number 10 and go to number 1. So number 10, hardcore narcotics. Since some of our modern painkillers like morphine are derived from the same source as things like opium and heroin, it's kind of logical, and if you think about it, a bit scary too, to learn that back in the old days, opium and heroin were widely distributed as everyday painkillers. On the other end of the drug spectrum, cocaine used to be a common medicine for toothaches. These products were both common and popular, so it is obvious that they worked well. It just took a while for people in medicine to believe that these drugs were actually doing more harm than good. But we really don't know what we were missing not having lived through a time when babies were given morphine while teething and people were given opium for diarrhea. Number 9, asbestos. Of course, we know that asbestos causes cancer. I mean, it's, a somewhat undesirable side effect of the stuff. But here's the thing. Even though it hasn't been allowed since the 1980s, 40,000 people in the U.S. died of asbestos-related cancer in 2016 alone due to past exposure. The problem is that it used to be used constantly. Even the ancient Egyptians used it. Asbestos made great insulation in buildings, plus it is completely fireproof. Even those popcorn ceilings that used to be popular used to be made from asbestos. It was used in like floor tiles, brake pads, and the U.S. military even used it making gas masks. If you have frequent exposure to dust from asbestos, the results can be deadly. So much for safety, I guess. Number 8, radioactive toys. Now, this is great. While we know today that radiation is certainly something that we should, I'd say, avoid exposure to, it actually used to be used in a number of children's toys back in the day. Toys like the Kix atomic ring featured polonium alpha particles on a zinc sulfide screen so that you could see little bursts of light as the radioactive particles hit it. The box said that it was perfectly safe, but radiation. And then there was the infamous Gilbert U-238 Atomic Energy Lab. The kit contained radioactive isotopes of zinc, lead, ruthenium, polonium, and uranium. It has been suggested that the radiation levels were actually quite low, but this was assuming a kid didn't open up the containers that the isotopes were stored in. Yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. Next, kind of continuing with that theme, we have radioactive drinks. I mean, if they put it in kids' toys, why not drink it too, right? So back in the 1920s, there was a drink called Radithor that was actually radium dissolved in water. The manufacturer assured customers that it was able to increase their energy and also heal conditions like impotence. A guy named Eben Bayers was known to have been an avid consumer of Radithor, and he was said to have drank several bottles a day for over 3 years. Unbeknownst to Bayers, when people consume radium, it gets absorbed into their bones. When he died shortly thereafter, he had developed holes in his skull and lost a good portion of his jawbone. All right, let's see. Number 6 here, we have bloodletting. This is wonderful. So medicine has gone through a lot of changes as people keep learning more about how and why things work the way they do. In medieval Europe, it was common practice to treat dozens of conditions by means of bloodletting. And we're talking anything from the plague to the gout. I sound like an old man. I called it the gout. I should say anything from the plague to gout was treated by it. And it was actually used by ancient Egyptians and Greeks as well. So the way it started was actually pretty simple. A sharp tool was used to pierce a patient's vein and allow the blood out. Ancient medical practitioners believed that many illnesses were caused by an overabundance of blood in the body. The solution? Let some of it out, of course. In a famous case of bloodletting, it is believed that it was at least in part responsible for the death of George Washington. Apparently, he was suffering with a sore throat, and the doctors took, 6 or 7 pints away from him to treat it. And since we only have, it's about 10 pints of blood in our bodies, you can see how this might not have been the ideal treatment for the president. And at number 5, we have mercury. And mercury is pretty cool looking and everything, but it's actually quite toxic. And the best part is it was given to babies to soothe teething back in the day. So in the form of a medication known as calomel, powdered mercury salt was used to treat a number of ailments, including constipation, headaches, and syphilis. I guess because if you're dead, you don't suffer from those ailments anymore. In any case, the taking of mercury as a medicine, well, the effects of that, not too positive. You have diarrhea, excessive drooling, and it causes damage to the nervous, digestive, and immune systems. It will damage your lungs and kidneys, and because it's a salt, it's also corrosive to your skin, eyes, and stomach. But wait, there's more. Extended use can lead to things like memory loss, motor dysfunction, kidney failure, tremors, headaches, and more. Mercury was taken orally by historical figures such as Abraham Lincoln, And Chinese Emperor Qin Shi Huang, I'm sure I pronounced that absolutely correctly, was entombed in so much mercury that nobody has even entered his tomb yet, even today. We know where it is, but we just can't go inside because the tomb contains supposedly massive rivers of mercury that have left it extremely toxic. Recent soil samples from outside of the tomb confirm this, and there is, like I said, even today, no timeline for when there will be a safe attempt to explore the tomb. And at number 4, we have lobotomies. I don't know how people ever thought that a lobotomy would be helpful to someone, but they really were commonplace in mental health for many, many years. Researchers believe that around 50,000 lobotomies were performed in the United States. That's pretty unbelievable. So they were first introduced as a cure for a host of mental illnesses, which Portuguese neurologist Egas Moni thought were caused by physical abnormalities in the brain. His theory was that if you could eliminate those physical abnormalities, you'd cure the illness. His solution was to sever the connecting fibers of neurons in the brain. He did this by sticking what was essentially an ice pick up the nose of the patient and wiggling it back and forth. The end of the metal instrument would cut into the brain tissue, severing the frontal lobes from the rest of the brain, and it did have a distinct effect on the patient's mental health thereafter. Unfortunately, it was not a cure, and it was actually probably even more brutal than it sounds. Many lobotomized patients became extremely subdued after the procedure. They lost the ability to feel or express any kind of emotion, and they did not engage with others. Some were even borderline catatonic. In other cases, the lobotomy actually made conditions worse, and in some, it even seemed to have no effect at all, meaning they went through the whole procedure and the whole ordeal of someone shoving an ice pick up their nose and swirling it around for no reason at all. The bottom line is that lobotomies didn't cure any mental illnesses. They just gave patients severe brain damage. At number 3, we have tapeworms. Now, if you've ever seen a photo of a full-grown tapeworm, it should make you squirm a little to realize that it was possible for a 6-foot-long parasitic worm to grow inside a human stomach. And get this, people actually used to infect themselves with these things on purpose. Like any parasite, a tapeworm needs a host. Okay, in this case, it's you, to keep it alive. So when you eat food, the tapeworm gets its share and grows bigger as a result. There have been reports of some tapeworms getting this is horrible, getting as big as up to 20 feet long. Now, how much food do you think a tapeworm of that size needs to keep nourished? There's a time when you could buy tapeworm eggs with the intended purpose of ingesting them so they would help you keep your figure. Tapeworms were a weight loss tool because as a parasite grows bigger, you need to consume massive amounts of calories just to maintain your weight. The problem, of course, is that not only do you have a gigantic parasitic worm in your stomach, but it's going to continue to consume your food and get bigger, requiring you to eat more and more just to stay alive each day. Not only that, having the tapeworm leads to all manner of physical ailments because you're unable to absorb nutrients any longer. You'll feel nausea, weakness, abdominal pain, dizziness, and more. Hey, sounds like a great idea to me. At number 2 on the list, we have alum. So alum is the common name for a compound called potassium alum. It is what the hippie deodorant crystals are made from. If you've ever seen, it's like a rock that is supposed to work. And it's also a component in baking powder. So while it can be used, the problem is it must be used safely, meaning in very small amounts if you're ingesting it at all. Back in the Victorian era, there were incidents when bakers tried to maximize profits using cheaper ingredients for making bread. Bread was a major staple of the Victorian diet because it was cheap, plentiful, and filling. The bakers would try to pad their ingredients by replacing more expensive things with plaster of Paris, chalk, and alum. Used in bread, it adds bulk and even whitens the bread. The problem is that these ingredients wreak havoc on the digestive system by causing either constipation or chronic diarrhea. I mean, I don't know which is worse. I mean, if you have to pick one or the other, but, it'd be tough having those two things fighting inside you to establish dominance, I guess. And number one on the list, we have smoking. Now, everybody, even smokers, you have to realize that cigarettes are bad for you. Countless studies have shown that cigarettes cause cancer and several other diseases. Fine. Believe it or not, people a couple of generations ago grew up in a world where cigarettes were considered actually good for you, and people smoked everywhere. They were safe. No problem. Here's the crazy thing. For quite some time before that, cigarettes were actually advertised as being good for you as well. So if you've ever seen their old radio ads and old TV ads or print ads where cigarettes are touted as being healthy for you. Old ads showed doctors lighting up with quotes like, letting you know how smooth and flavorful that brand was. Others featured a satisfied doctor letting you know how smoking this brand wouldn't cause any throat irritation whatsoever. Camel Cigarettes posted that more doctors smoke their brands than any other. Viceroy claimed that dentists recommend their brand the most. Chesterfield ads claimed that scientific evidence proved that there was no danger to your nose, throat, or sinuses by smoking their brand. I mean, who are we to disbelieve these statements, right? So, after reading through these 10 and then actually thinking about them and reading them for you guys, I am for sure happy that time has moved on since then. I mean, how did kids survive growing up during a time that these things were actually okay? I mean, well, they took away lawn darts too, so I don't know what this world's coming to. All right, next up, we have some pensioners who are learning how to make their own caskets. So if you're getting older and find that you lack a hobby, I just may have found the solution for you. A coffin club. Started in 2010 by former New Zealand palliative care nurse Katie Williams, coffin clubs are DIY arts and crafts groups where members decorate their own caskets. I guess it's for people who want to go out in style, right? Anyway, club members gather once a week to decorate and beautify their own coffin in a style of their choosing. Just think of the possibilities. The article I read suggested painting your coffin to resemble a checkered flag to indicate you've reached your final lap, or plastering it with pictures of Elvis to let people know that you've left the building. Instead of having to buy an overpriced coffin from a funeral home merchant of death, club members are provided with materials and workshops to construct coffins at a fraction of the price. Sure, they may look like they came straight out of a Home Depot project class, but that's what the bedazzling is for, and plus, they're going to be underground anyway, so it's all good. Aside from the original Kiwi Coffin Club, additional chapters have formed in Australia, the UK, and here in the United States. Plus, according to the founder, people in more than 50 countries have contacted her asking for help in establishing a regional branch. So if you're going to pimp your coffin, what would it look like? For me, I'm thinking it would be cool to hire like one of those hot rod guys, airbrushers, or like a tattoo artist to do some cool designs on there. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know. Egyptian baker arrested for inappropriate cupcakes. A female pastry chef was arrested at her home after it was revealed that she had supplied cupcakes with phallic decorations for a private birthday party at a sporting club in a wealthy Cairo neighborhood. During the party, attendees shared photos of the cupcakes on social media, and Egyptian state media reported that security forces managed to identify the baker after taking statements from eyewitnesses. Sohair El Attar, a 74-year-old Cairo University professor who attended the party, told El Watan News that guests were surprised by the genitally decorated treats. He added that he wondered if the cupcakes were meant for something else and had been served at the birthday party by mistake. A person familiar with the incident told The Independent, "Nobody complained at the time. Then the authorities got a hold of a picture, and it blew up in their faces. Egypt's Minister for Youth and Sports, Dr. Ashraf Sobi, got involved in the case and announced that his department would form a committee to investigate the incident and punish the alleged perpetrators. Yes, you're hearing this right. All for cupcakes with private parts on them. And just to be fair, this sort of thing is not an isolated incident in Egypt. So just last week, 2 female TikTokers who served jail terms last year for violating family values and harming public morals were acquitted. The women had initially been sentenced to 2 years in prison. Their crime? One of them, Haneen Hassam, posted a video telling her 1.3 million subscribers that girls could work with her for money. She was accused of inciting debauchery, attacking public morals, and human trafficking. Meanwhile, Mawada al-Adham was also arrested for breaching public morals in May 2020 after publishing satirical videos. In June 2020, an Egyptian court sentenced the belly dancer Sama al-Masri to 3 years over inciting debauchery on social media after posting a TikTok dance video. In 2018, a female singer was detained on the same charge after an online video clip of her dancing went viral, and the previous year, a female pop singer was sentenced to 2 years in prison on similar charges. So anyway, the baker was interrogated by the same misdemeanor court that recently tried the Egyptian actor Reina Youssef on charges of contempt of Islam and infringing upon Egyptian family values after she wore a, quote, revealing, unquote, dress while attending the closing ceremony of a film festival in Cairo. Many Egyptian tabloids published pictures of the cupcakes with the offending decorations blurred out. Egypt's largest state-owned newspaper, Al Aram, described the confections as having indecent and immoral shapes. The newspaper reported that the pastry chef was in tears when she arrived at a prosecution office in Cairo. She told interrogators that customers came to my shop and handed me pictures of genitals and asked me for cakes in these forms. Many people who have been following the story on social media criticize Egypt's slow response to arrest sexual harassers, rapists, and abusers compared to the measures being taken against these women. I mean, really, 2021. And really, Egypt, the Bengals would be so disappointed. And I thought this was pretty interesting. It's extra rules added to popular games by families. Because we've done this. So growing up, we all had our own made-up rules that, you add to games. Sometimes it was your group of friends that you make up these rules, and sometimes it was a family, like a house rule. So this was on Reddit, and they asked people to talk about what were some of the interesting family rules that have been added to different games. So tell me what you think of these. So some of these you might have heard of yourself, and some you might use. So like I said, let me know. First off, with Monopoly, it's the mugging rule. So what happens is if I land on a space that you're currently occupying, I can choose to mug you. We take turns rolling the dice. If I roll higher, I steal $100. If you roll higher, I go to jail. I'm kind of, that doesn't do it for me. I don't know. Second one is Uno, stacking wild draw fours. So stacking draw fours in Uno is valid. According to this person, I don't care what Hasbro has to say about it. I don't know. I don't remember if we've ever done this. I don't play Uno enough, I guess. I mean, I played it a fair number of times. Doesn't really sway me either way. And the person that contributed this also said they had a habit of Sharpie, writing Sharpie rules on the cards. That's okay. In fact, there's a set that we just got a couple, 3 years ago, I want to say, and they did include some blank cards. So I think that's a thing. And that's okay as long as they're reasonable. Next, with Scrabble, they have the longest word rule. So what this person says is in Scrabble, the person who can make the longest word goes first. And if there's a tie, the highest points takes the tie. And supposedly this makes the game more fun by ensuring there are lots of places to play your letters. I'm not into that. Next for the game, Guess Who? No questions about appearance. So instead, this family, they ask questions like, has your person ever, tripped over a paperclip, or does your person have strong opinions about fonts, or I don't know. That's dumb to me. Next, Catan. I know it's a super popular game. I've never played it in my life. Hopefully some of the people that are listening have played it, and maybe you can let me know if this rule makes any sense or is valid. It says, this person says, in Catan, when you roll a 7 or play a knight, you have to move the robber, but you can move it back to the desert and claim any resource you want from the bank. Like I said, I have no clue what that means. So I'm going to say I really don't care about that one too much either way. But like I said, if you play Catan, maybe you can let me know if that's a good rule. Next up, we have another Monopoly rule. Play with different types of dice. So one contributor said, I really like running Monopoly games with 2 20-sided dice instead of the normal 6-sided dice, and it makes it more chaotic. Yeah, I can see that. And the other person that commented on that to that person recommended 8-sided dice, or 1 6-sided, 1 8-sided, or even 3 4-sided dice. This is getting confusing. That person thinks that 2 20-sided dice is way too big. I don't know. I mean, does it really matter? This would require buying like weirdly shaped dice. So I don't know. I mean, what else are you going to use like a 20-sided dice for? Next one is in Clue. The killer chases the other players. So in Clue, once the killer has been discovered and it's one of the pieces in play, the game becomes like a chase game. The remaining player turns or rolls to get out of the mansion through the doors in the hall. The killer tries to catch the remaining pieces and kill them. Secret passage only work if you roll even numbers in that room. The killer rolls twice per turn and cannot use secret passages. If the killer wasn't one of the played pieces, then the game is over. They couldn't defend themselves and surrendered after being discovered. This may not be so bad. I mean, at least it extends the game. I mean, I haven't played Clue since I was a kid, but that one might be okay. Number 8, I am wholly in favor of with Uno, never apologize. Absolutely never apologize in Uno. So what this rule is, if you say sorry while playing Uno, you have to draw 2. You know what? It is with great joy that I play a wild draw 4 or play a reverse or skip to kind of screw someone over. So no, you can't apologize in Uno. That's serious business. That's combat. Another Uno rule, table talk freely. So this involves open conversation for players. So if you have like one person that calls Uno, then you all plan together to make sure that person doesn't win. The thing is, you talk about it openly. Like, hey, do you have a reverse or a skip? And then I can play this and that. What color do you think they have? And that sort of thing. I mean, why not? That one's okay. I'll go with that one. Trivial Pursuit. That's a game I haven't heard of in years. In Trivial Pursuit, if the player being asked doesn't know the answer, they can ask the room. The room doesn't actually answer, but they say whether they even know the answer or not. If nobody knows the answer, it's considered an invalid question, and another card gets drawn instead. If someone in the room does know, but the player being asked doesn't, then it's just a plain old pass. So if you're playing with a bunch of dumb people, then none of the questions are valid. I don't get it. No, I don't like that. Monopoly, all deals are valid. So for this person, literally anything goes in Monopoly. Whatever business deals you make in Monopoly are valid. That includes paying insurance each round so that if you land on their rent properties, you don't have to pay. Now that's interesting. I don't know. Next up for Scrabble, make up a story. So at the end of Scrabble, you make up a story with all the words on the board. The person that submitted this said that they never looked at the tiles for scores. They just played to get the best words on the board. You know, the thing is, Scrabble games tend to take a while, and by the time they end, I don't want to mess around with it anymore. I just want to clean up and be done with it. So, no, I don't want to make up a story. Now, Risk. I don't know if I played that game since shortly after high school. Anyway, if you roll 3 6s when attacking, you defeat every army on the territory you're attacking into. If you roll 3 1s, you nuke yourself and lose every army in the territory you're attacking from. I don't know. Like I said, it's been so many years since I played. That one doesn't. I don't really care about that either way. Monopoly, the free parking rule. Now this one I played before, and this one I don't mind. So this person said that we always put money into the middle of the board when playing Monopoly, and the person who lands on free parking gets that money in the middle. I play with that, and I don't mind that. I think that's kind of a fun bonus. So that was actually, I didn't go over number by number. That was 14 things that we went over. So overall, I'd say a few of them were okay. Most of them, to me, didn't make sense. And, well, like I said, the Catan thing, had no idea what I was reading. So originally, this list had something like 25 or 26, and I narrowed it down. So believe me, there's some real dumb ones in there. So in reality, most people need to they need to learn the regular rules before they go adding a bunch of these kooky rules, because it just gets horrible. So anyway. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of News with Bill. So I want to thank you for listening, and thank you for being patient with me. And please be sure to subscribe to the show and give us a rating wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember that I'd love to hear your feedback or ideas, so please let me know what you're thinking. You can comment on this episode at newswithbill.com. And I'm also at newswithbill on Twitter and Instagram. You can send the show an email to feedback@newswithbill.com. Or please call and leave a voicemail on the News with Bill hotline at 209-854-4620. And I'll play it on the air. So please don't forget to tell a friend about the show. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next time.